The Boeing 787 trembled softly as it pierced through thick clouds, the afternoon light of Chicago fading behind its wings. Olivia Bennett leaned her head against the window, her eyelashes drooping with exhaustion after 3 consecutive days at the pediatric medical conference. Numbers, charts, and endless discussions still swirled in her head like waves refusing to break. A peaceful flight that was all she wanted. But fate rarely allows peace when one craves silence. A cry echoed from somewhere in the first-class cabin. At first, it was faint, almost like a hiccup, but soon it turned into a frantic wail that shattered the calm inside the recycled air of the aircraft. Olivia's eyes opened, her brows furrowed slightly. It was a baby's cry, but the sound broken, hoarse, and laced with gasping breaths told her instantly this wasn't hunger or fatigue. It was pain. Row 23B, where she sat, remained calm. The man next to her adjusted his headphones, while others frowned in annoyance. Olivia looked up at the seatbelt sign. It was still lit. She couldn't move. Yet the instinct of a doctor surged inside her. That baby, about 8 or 9 months, she murmured to herself, listening carefully to the rhythm of the cries, noting every sharp breath. She'd heard hundreds of babies cry, but something about this one made her chest tighten. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Olivia stood, straightened her coat, and walked toward the front along the narrow aisle. A flight attendant spotted her and frowned slightly. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. We're still experiencing mild turbulence." "I'm a pediatrician," Olivia said calmly but firmly. "That baby sounds like he's having trouble breathing. Please, let me take a look." She pulled a conference badge from her purse, showing her name and the words Boston Pediatric Conference 2025. After a moment's hesitation, the attendant nodded and drew back the curtain between economy and first class. The sight beyond made Olivia pause for half a second. There, under the soft glow of first-class lighting, sat a man in a wrinkled white shirt, holding a baby who was crying uncontrollably. His eyes were deep brown, almost black, shadowed with fatigue so heavy it bordered on frightening. Yet beneath that exhaustion, Olivia glimpsed something else: fear. He tightened his hold on the baby, his voice hoarse. "I've tried everything. Milk, rocking, singing, nothing works." Olivia gave a small, reassuring smile as she stepped closer. "May I help? I'm a doctor." The man looked up, his gaze locking with hers. For a fleeting second, Olivia felt as if she were standing before a storm trapped behind those eyes, intense, brooding, unpredictable. "You're a doctor?" he asked, his voice low, carrying a faint Italian accent softened by an American tone. "Pediatrics. I just want to take a look. If you'll allow me." He was silent for a moment, then nodded. The baby Noah, as he softly called him, was flushed, his body tense, breathing irregular. Olivia gently reached out, her hand brushing his wrist, a brief touch that made him instinctively tighten his grip, as though afraid something fragile might slip away. She cradled Noah on her arm, tilting him slightly while her palm rubbed gentle circles over his tiny stomach. The crying persisted, then slowly eased. "He's bloated," she whispered. "You've been feeding him formula with cow's milk protein, haven't you?" "How did you know?" Olivia smiled faintly without looking up. "I can tell from the cry. It's the rhythm of abdominal spasms, not fear or hunger." Her voice was soft as silk, soothing both the baby and the tense father. She lifted Noah against her shoulder and patted his back lightly. The final sobs faded. Then a small sound broke the silence burp, and the baby relaxed, his little hands unclenching. The cabin fell into calm once more. Olivia smiled, gazing down at the baby's peaceful face. There, all better. He just needed the right position and a gentle touch. The man across from her kept watching, his eyes a mix of fatigue, astonishment, and something else deeper, slower, harder to read. "Thank you. Doctor. Olivia Bennett. Henry Sullivan." His name lingered in the air, simple yet strangely weighty. Perhaps it was the way he said it, low and certain, as if the world already knew who he was, except her. "Where are you based, New York?" "St. Mary's Hospital." Henry nodded slightly, his lips curving faintly, half gratitude, half curiosity. "Thank you, truly. I don't know what I would have done if... No need to thank me. Just doing my job." Olivia handed Noah back, her hand brushing the baby's shoulder with instinctive tenderness. The child slept peacefully in his father's arms. Henry looked down at his son, then up at her, as if she'd performed a quiet miracle. Few people can calm chaos the way you just did. Maybe just luck. Olivia smiled. Still, try switching to a different formula. If he's still uncomfortable after a week, test for allergies. Henry tilted his head, half smiling. You've just taught me more than any consultant ever has. I don't charge tuition. The plane shook lightly. Olivia steadied herself on the seat, and Henry instinctively reached out, his palm brushing her wrist warm, strong, sending a subtle current up her spine. Careful, Dr. Bennett. When the plane landed in Miami, Olivia exited first. She didn't look back, yet she could feel his gaze following her. Some part of her strangely wished he'd say something, stop her, or simply whisper goodbye. But Henry Sullivan said nothing. He just stood there, holding his son, his eyes calm and dark, as if engraving the image of the woman who had soothed his child to sleep. 3 days later, Olivia was back in her routine hospital rounds, case files, the laughter and cries of children. Everything felt as if that fateful flight had never happened. Until one late afternoon, a nurse called her to the reception desk. Dr. Bennett, someone's here to see you. I'm on shift. Who is it? A man. He looks a little intimidating, but he said he only wanted to thank you. When Olivia stepped out, amidst the bustle of the hospital lobby, a man in a gray suit stood there, holding a bouquet of white tulips. Light from the glass doors reflected in those dark brown eyes she remembered from above the clouds. Henry Sullivan. He walked toward her, a faint smile crossing his calm face almost like a shadow. I told myself I wouldn't look for you. But then Noah cried again, and I remembered only one person ever made him stop. Olivia stood still. Around her, footsteps, voices, and intercom sounds seemed to fade. All that remained was his deep voice and the strange feeling stirring in her chest. Equal parts caution and curiosity. Henry looked straight at her, his gaze leaving no room for doubt. Would you have dinner with me tonight, Dar? Bennett. That simple question opened a path Olivia never expected a path, where love and danger blurred into one. Outside the glass doors, rain fell over Miami like threads of silver. In that moment, Olivia felt every safe choice she'd ever made begin to blur beneath the weight of his gaze. She didn't know it yet, but that dinner would not only change her life, it would pull her into a world where love and sin shared the same shade of color. If you've ever believed that fateful encounters only exist in romance stories, stay with Olivia and Henry because their destiny has only just begun. Follow to see Part 2, An Invitation in the Dark. Dinner took place that evening at a restaurant on the top floor of the Riverside Hotel, where Miami's lights shimmered on the ocean like thousands of shattered pearls. Olivia had never imagined herself sitting in such a place. White tablecloths, the soft hum of violins, bottles of wine so expensive she'd normally back away just from reading the label. But Henry Sullivan made it all seem ordinary, as if the world itself had been built around him. He chose a table by the window. The sea breeze drifted through his dark hair, carrying the faint scent of salt and whiskey. Olivia sat across from him, fingers interlaced beneath the table, reminding herself over and over, it's just a thank you dinner, nothing more. Yet when his eyes met hers, deep, calm, unreadable reason began to blur. Thank you for coming, Dr. Bennett, Henry began, his voice low and smooth like smoke. I didn't really have a reason to refuse, Olivia replied with a soft smile, unless you're planning to make me regret it. A faint curve crossed his lips, not quite a smile, more a subtle flicker between amusement and calculation. I hope I'm not someone you'd regret meeting. She glanced around. A few men in black suits sat near the exits, their eyes sharp and cold, not restaurant staff. Olivia noticed immediately. Do you always travel with company? She asked, trying to sound casual. Only when I need to ensure the safety of the person I'm meeting. Something in his tone made her frown. That wasn't politeness, it sounded more like a warning. Henry poured the wine. She noticed his hands' long fingers, firm joints, a silver watch glinting under the light. Nothing ostentatious, yet every motion carried an air of quiet authority. I don't drink until I know why I'm here, Olivia said, tilting her head. So tell me, Mr. Sullivan, is this gratitude or something else? Henry leaned in slightly, eyes locking on hers. I want you to be Noah's personal physician. The air between them froze. Olivia blinked. I already have a job. I don't work privately. I know. He interrupted softly, his tone light as wind, yet carrying weight that couldn't be ignored. I'm not asking in the usual way. She leaned back with a faint smirk. I'm not used to unusual offers. Mr. Sullivan? He studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, You don't have to call me Mr. Sullivan. Henry is fine. The way he said his name sounded less like permission and more like an invitation, one that led across a dangerous line. And in that instant, Olivia realized the real danger wasn't the guards outside, it was the man sitting before her. Henry. She tested, her voice steady. You really think I'd leave my hospital, my work, to serve someone I barely know from a flight, I don't think. He replied evenly. I know. Olivia laughed softly. You're confident. Not confident, he said. Certain. I trust you. And I believe Noah needs you more than anyone. The words stopped her. For the first time, his voice wasn't cool. It was sincere, almost fragile. She inhaled deeply. You could find dozens of pediatricians. I just happened to be there when your son needed help. True, Henry nodded. But Noah only stopped crying when you held him. And since my wife passed away, I haven't seen him that peaceful again. Olivia met his gaze. He didn't look away. In those dark brown eyes, she saw a depth of grief no words could describe. Neither spoke. The only sounds were the quiet clink of silverware and the distant murmur of the ocean below. Dinner lasted longer than expected. Henry asked about her work, about the children she'd saved, listening with an unusual attentiveness, a powerful man momentarily learning how to be a father. Olivia realized that behind his composed exterior lay fear of loss, of failure, and of love itself. When they left the restaurant, the Miami night wind carried the scent of salt and faint music from the harbor. Henry walked beside her, not touching, not pushing, yet his presence filled the air between them. I'm not accepting your offer, she said softly but firmly. No matter how tempting it sounds? I wouldn't force you, Henry replied, his tone holding both amusement and challenge. But I'm not someone who hears no often. That made Olivia glance at him. And I'm not someone who changes her answer. Perhaps you will, he said, smiling faintly, the streetlight catching on that smile like a blade. I'm patient. Dr. Bennett. Before she could respond, a black SUV pulled up. One of the suited men opened the door. Henry inclined his head. Allow me to drive you home. Olivia meant to refuse, but his eyes held hers, and the words faltered. Something about him made resistance and surrender feel dangerously close. Fine, she said quietly. Just this once. The car glided along the coastal boulevard, the city lights reflected in the windows, rippling across their faces. Neither spoke. Only the hum of the engine and the quiet rhythm of their breathing filled the space, two parallel lines inching toward collision. When they stopped in front of her apartment, Henry stepped out first and opened the door, a simple gesture. Yet there was something protective, almost possessive, in the way he did it. Thank you, she said. But I still haven't changed my mind. I don't expect you to, he said gently, his voice barely above a whisper. Just don't shut the door completely. She stood on the steps, the hallway light spilling across his face. His eyes were the same as they'd been on the plane storms that never slept. Good night, Henry. Good night, Olivia. The door closed. Her heartbeat didn't. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Henry's gaze silent, steady, unsettling. She turned on the lamp, opened her notebook as if grounding herself in routine. In the corner of the page lay the card he'd left Henry Sullivan, HS, Holdings, no address, no title, only a phone number. Who is this man? Really, she wondered. There was something about the restaurant staff's behavior, the quiet men in suits, that told her Henry wasn't just another businessman. What frightened her more was that she wanted to know. The next morning, As Olivia prepared to leave for work, she found a small package by her door. Inside was a wooden music box, carved with the shape of wings. When she opened it, a soft lullaby played the same melody she had hummed to Noah on the flight. A note accompanied it, written in neat handwriting. Noah sleeps better whenever he hears this tune. I thought you should have a copy. H.S. Olivia stood still, her fingers brushing the words. There was something tender and unsettling in such quiet thoughtfulness. Henry Sullivan was not a man who gave gifts carelessly. Every gesture meant something. She wasn't sure she wanted to know what. That afternoon, during her hospital shift, a nurse rushed up. Dr. Bennett, new patient infant, severe milk allergy. The parents requested you personally. I'm busy. Have Dr. Parker take it. They refused, the nurse said in a low voice. The father mentioned your name and handed me this insurance card. He said you'd recognize it. Olivia took the card black, embossed with the Sullivan Enterprises logo. A chill ran down her spine. Bring them to room 4. When she entered, Henry was there, white shirt, sleeves rolled up, Noah in his arms. The baby giggled, bright and healthy, nothing like the fragile child from the plane. You brought him here again, she asked, half annoyed, half surprised. I promised I'd follow your advice, Henry said, but this time I wanted to be thorough. You're the only one I trust. Olivia glanced toward the door. 2 men in black suits stood outside. Unease crept up her spine. Henry, this is a public hospital. You can't just walk in with bodyguards. I don't have a choice. He looked down at Noah, his voice softening. Someone's been watching us. She froze. Watching you, who? I'm not sure. But one thing I do know. His eyes met hers, sharp and serious. You shouldn't go home alone tonight. Olivia wanted to laugh it off, to call him paranoid, but there was no trace of exaggeration in his expression. Beneath that calm exterior, she saw genuine fear, the kind born from loss, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she believed him. That evening, when Olivia stepped out of the hospital, Henry's car was already waiting by the curb. The door opened soundlessly. He stood by it, hands in his pockets, his shadow long beneath the streetlight. I'll take you home. Olivia hesitated. The night breeze rustled through the palm trees. Part of her wanted to refuse. Another, smaller, defiant part wanted to trust him. She walked toward him, each step slower than the last, as if nearing something unnamed. Henry opened the door. Thank you, but I can drive myself. I know, he said quietly. But I wouldn't be at peace if you did. The car's light glowed across his face, striking, cold, enigmatic. Olivia stepped in. The door closed, sealing them off from the world outside. And from that moment on, Olivia Bennett had no idea her life had just turned down a road with no return, the road of Henry Sullivan, the man who carried both darkness and the light she never expected to find. The Miami night shimmered with the mingled hues of sea blue and city gold. A late breeze brushed through the rows of palms outside the car window, whispering like the sigh of a city that never slept. Inside the quiet vehicle, only soft music and the steady sound of 2 breaths remained. Olivia gazed through the glass as the bayside roads slid past like frames of a slow-moving film. She stole a glance at Henry, his profile in the glow of the passing streetlights, features sharp, composed, unreadable. There was something about him that made her wary, yet unable to look away. Where are you taking me? Henry, she broke the silence. Home, he said simply. My home. And for now, the safest place for you. I don't think I need to be that safe, not enough to follow a man I've met only twice home. Olivia replied, her tone edged with irony. Henry turned slightly, the amber streetlight flickering across his dark brown eyes. There are things you don't need to believe, he said softly. Only to feel... Had anyone else said that, Olivia might have laughed. But from him, it sounded natural, like a quiet command disguised as kindness. The car turned down a narrow lane paved with white stone. Rows of automatic lights flickered on in sequence, illuminating the path toward a secluded villa nestled among palm trees. The iron gates opened without a sound, revealing a vast, breath-stealing expanse beyond. Olivia couldn't help but whisper, "Wow." The mansion rose like a sculpture of glass and steel, its reflective panels catching the moonlight. An artificial lake stretched in front, koi fish gliding lazily beneath glowing lights. It was peaceful, unnervingly so, like calmness built to hide something else. Henry stepped out and opened her door. "Welcome to my home, Dr. Bennett." There was no trace of boastfulness in his tone, yet the way he stood radiated authority, the kind that belonged to a man used to commanding, protecting, and concealing. Olivia smiled faintly, teasing to ease the tension. "Your home, I'd call it more of a fortress. Even fortresses can be sanctuaries, if you want them to be." The ambiguity in his voice left her unsure how to reply. Inside, warm golden light filled the spacious living room. A middle-aged woman approached with a gentle smile. "Welcome, Doctor. I'm Marta, the housekeeper. Mr. Sullivan told me to prepare the guest room for you." "Oh, I'm just stopping by," Olivia said quickly. "I don't plan to stay." Henry calmly removed his watch and placed it on the wooden counter. "Stay tonight," he said in that same quiet, steady tone. "At least until I'm sure no one's following you." "You make it sound like I've witnessed a crime," she said dryly. "Sometimes," he murmured. "Being in the wrong place at the wrong time is enough to make you part of one." Olivia opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes silenced her. That wasn't a threat. It was truth. The guest lounge was minimalist black leather chairs, polished wood floors, abstract paintings, everything placed perfectly, too perfectly, almost lifeless. Marta brought tea. The soft scent of lavender calmed her nerves. Olivia glanced toward the man by the window, silhouetted against the lake. Nothing about him resembled an ordinary businessman. It wasn't his wealth, it was the invisible distance surrounding him, as if the air itself knew not to come too close. "I know you're wondering where you've just stepped into," Henry said without turning. "I don't blame you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Then tell me, who is Henry Sullivan? Really?" He turned, his eyes dark and steady. A man who once had everything, and lost almost all of it. The answer was vague, but something in his voice, a quiet fracture beneath the calm, kept her from asking more. "I'll stay for one night," she said softly, setting her teacup down. "Tomorrow, I'm leaving." Henry nodded. "I won't stop you. But if you do leave, let me see you off." Olivia smiled faintly, saying nothing. She didn't yet know that those words, "let me see you off," would one day draw the line between their destinies. Her room was on the second floor, facing the garden. As Marta led her down the corridor, Olivia noticed framed photos along the wall, a young woman with soft brown hair and gentle blue eyes. In one picture, Henry had his arm around her, smiling a genuine smile, full of light. "Who's she?" Olivia asked quietly. Marta's smile faltered. "The late Mrs. Sullivan, Sophia. She passed away giving birth to the young master." Olivia fell silent. A wave of quiet sympathy washed over her. And in that moment, she understood the darkness behind Henry's eyes, the kind born when light has been extinguished. The guest room was 3 times the size of her small New York apartment. White bed, glass doors opening onto a moonlit garden. Everything was elegant, immaculate and cold, like a home that had forgotten how to breathe. She sat on the bed, listening to the silence. Outside, the lights still glowed faintly. Shadows of men patrolled the grounds. She recalled Henry's words. "No one comes near this house without my permission," a sentence that sounded like both protection and imprisonment. Olivia chuckled softly to herself. "What are you doing here?" Olivia Bennett, a pediatrician in the home of a man whose glance can silence an entire room. She reached for the light switch when a knock came at the door. Henry stood there, sleeves rolled, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a baby bottle in his hand. "I don't know how to use this," he said, as if confessing a small crime. Olivia couldn't help smiling. "Give it here." She adjusted the bottle's cap. "You don't need it that hot, just warm." Henry stood close enough for her to catch the faint scent of sandalwood on his skin. "I used to have someone do this," he said quietly. "But after Sophia, I don't want anyone else touching Noah's things." His voice was low, weary. Olivia looked up and under the soft light. He wasn't the powerful figure from before, but a lonely father clinging to duty. "You love your son very much, don't you?" "He's all I have left." The words silenced her. After a pause, She smiled gently. You did it right. Henry, you just forgot one small thing. What's that? Before feeding him, test the milk on your wrist to make sure it's not too hot. Henry followed her advice. A drop slid down his skin. He glanced up, smiling a rare, tender smile that softened his whole face. Just right. Good, Olivia said, smiling back. For a fleeting moment, something shifted between them unspoken, fragile, but enough to make her heartbeat stumble. When Henry left, Olivia stood by the door, watching his figure disappear down the hall. Light glowed faintly from his room, and somewhere in the distance, a child's laugh echoed pure and bright, like a tiny miracle. She turned away and drew the curtains, but sleep never came. Her mind kept replaying the image of Henry holding his son and that brief, disarming smile. Perhaps even in the deepest darkness, people still find a private light. And the light within Henry Sullivan, strangely, was one Olivia both longed to approach and feared she'd never escape. The next morning, a knock woke her. Marta entered with breakfast and a small folded note. I'll be away for a few hours. If you need anything, ask Marta. The glass door opens to the garden. It's quieter there than anywhere else. H. Olivia carried her coffee to the garden. Morning air drifted through, scented with jasmine and dew. She followed a stone path, stopping where small birds bathed in the sunlight. The peace was so complete, she almost forgot she was in the home of a man shrouded in mystery. Until she heard footsteps behind her. Dr. Bennett, that deep, gravelly voice again. Didn't expect you to be up so early. She turned to see Henry's sleeves rolled, a mug in his hand, sunlight catching his shoulders. The sternness of last night was gone. He looked human, just a man after a short night's rest. I'm not used to quiet places, she said. In New York, car horns are my lullabies. He laughed a low, rare sound. Then maybe I should hire a few trucks to park out front, just to help you sleep. She chuckled softly. Then silence settled again. Henry sat opposite her, his gaze following the ripples on the pond. Do you think every meeting happens for a reason? He asked idly. I believe in coincidence, Olivia said. But sometimes coincidence is just fate in disguise. Henry nodded slowly, eyes deep and reflective. I think so too. A breeze stirred, brushing strands of hair across her cheek. Henry reached out, almost unconsciously, and gently moved them aside. The gesture was small, yet her heartbeat skipped. Their eyes met. In that sunlit garden, silence stretched until even their breathing seemed loud. Henry drew back first, gaze shifting. You should rest a bit more. I've arranged a car to take you home this afternoon. So I'm finally free, she teased lightly. I don't hold anyone captive. Olivia, he said softly, but sometimes safety only exists when you choose to stay. His words hung in the air like a thin, lingering thread of smoke. And in that moment, Olivia realized whatever connected them was no longer coincidence. Something was forming slow, silent, and as dangerous as the man before her. The Miami afternoon was veiled in a sheet of silvery clouds, the sunlight fading slowly over the still lake. Olivia stood by the second-floor window, watching Noah play in the garden with Marta, the housekeeper. The boys' laughter rang out, bright and delicate like strings of glass beads shattering under the sun. Every time Olivia looked at Noah, her heart softened. There was something about this child that made her want to protect him, though she still didn't know what exactly she was protecting him from. Henry had not returned yet. Earlier that morning, he had received a phone call. His face hardened, and within minutes, he was gone, leaving behind only one instruction to Marta. One is to leave the house until I'm back. His voice had been steady and deep, but there was a layer of unease beneath it. Olivia tried to convince herself it was just business. But in the corner of the yard, two unfamiliar men in black suits stood motionless, their eyes fixed on the gates. The sense of safety she had felt began to crack. She tried reading to calm herself, but couldn't focus. In this suffocating silence, every sound seemed too loud: the rustle of palm leaves, the ticking of the clock, and the frantic rhythm of her own pulse losing direction. Dusk fell. The sea breeze carried the faint tang of salt. Olivia sat with Noah, teaching him a simple rhyme. Marta brought dinner to the terrace, smiling kindly though her eyes betrayed unease. Still no call from Mr. Sullivan, Olivia asked, her voice trembling slightly. Not yet. Miss, Marta replied, shaking her head. But he always keeps his word. If he says he'll return, he will. Olivia nodded. She wanted to believe that. And yet, part of her didn't understand why she cared so deeply about Henry, a man whose life was still a mystery to her. Then, from a distance, came a strange sound, an engine revving harshly, followed by the screech of tires. Marta flinched and ran toward the balcony. Olivia clutched Noah tightly in her arms. What's happening? Before she could hear an answer, a sharp bang split the air, the unmistakable crack of a gunshot echoing through the garden. Noah burst into tears. Olivia held him tighter, her heart hammering wildly. More gunshots followed closer, louder, relentless. Marta's face went pale. This way. Quickly, she cried. She led Olivia through the hallway to the far end, where a blank white wall stood without a handle. Marta pressed on a wooden panel. A hidden door swung open. The safe room. Inside. Now Olivia clutched Noah and stepped in. The door sealed shut behind them, cutting off the light. Only a dim emergency lamp glowed. The air smelled faintly of cold wood and metal. Noah kept crying. Olivia tried to soothe him, her hands trembling. Gunfire rattled faintly through the walls, every echo syncing with her heartbeat. She didn't know how long they had been inside. Minutes, hours, when the door finally opened, the first thing she felt was a rush of warm air and the familiar voice that made her chest tighten. Olivia. She looked up. Henry stood there, his shirt stained with blood, his arms scraped, his face streaked with smoke and sweat. But his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, burned with anger and relief at once. You're hurt, she gasped. I'm fine. He shook his head and reached for Noah, taking him gently from her arms. It's okay, buddy. You're safe now. The boy stopped crying instantly at the sound of his voice. Olivia froze. It was as if Henry's words alone could calm the world itself. What just happened, she demanded, her throat dry. Who attacked you? Henry studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, Someone wants what's mine, and they'll use any means to get it. What's yours? Olivia asked. Money power. He shook his head. No, Noah. The words hit her like a slap. They're after Noah. Henry nodded, his gaze darkening. And they won't stop. A chill ran through her veins. He held Noah close, then looked at her. I told you to stay not because I needed protection, but because I needed to protect you. From the moment you appeared, they believed you meant something to me. That's my fault. Her chest ached. So I'm just a weakness then, aren't I? Her voice was small but trembling with hurt. Henry didn't answer at once. He laid Noah gently on the couch, covered him with a blanket, then turned back. His hand lifted her chin, his gaze firm, unyielding. You're not a weakness, Olivia, he said quietly. You're the only thing that reminds me I'm still human. She froze. The words were both confession and curse. The moment between them thickened, electric. The dim light from the ceiling traced the line of his jaw. The scent of gunpowder mixed with sandalwood filled the air. Olivia's head spun. Who are you? Really? Henry, she whispered. Because right now it feels like I'm in a world where if I close my eyes, I'll never wake up again. Henry smiled faintly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You're right. I'm not an ordinary man. But I swear to you, I've never made an innocent person pay the price. And the men outside, she asked softly, who died for you? Henry. He was silent. His eyes lowered, then lifted again, deep as the ocean at night. They made their choices. Olivia had no words. In that moment, she saw it clearly. They came from two opposite worlds. She saved lives. He took them. And yet, inexplicably, she couldn't hate him. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the faint glow of patrol cars reflected on the lake. From below came muffled voices, men talking in low tones. She caught fragments: the docks, the traitor, the escape. Each word deepened her unease. The door opened softly. Henry stepped in, wearing a black coat, his face pale with fatigue. "They've pulled back," he said. "But I don't know for how long. What are you going to do?" "End it," he replied simply. "At the root." She stared at him, worry flickering in her eyes. "And if you don't come back?" He stopped, then stepped closer, close enough for her to feel his breath. "I'll come back," he murmured. "Because there's something I haven't told you yet." Olivia wanted to ask what, but before she could, he turned away. The door closed behind him, leaving only his scent lingering in the quiet. She sat for a long time after that, feeling the undercurrent in her chest. From outside came the faint sound of a car engine fading beyond the gates. The wind stirred the palms, their leaves whispering secrets she couldn't decipher. A strange feeling took hold, half fear, half longing. Henry Sullivan, a man whose past she didn't understand, but who somehow made her want to believe. She didn't know it yet, but that night would become a mark she could never erase. Because after those gunshots, the shadows of Henry's world would begin to emerge, dragging Olivia's heart into a danger where love was not merely a feeling, but a choice between light and darkness. Near dawn, as exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep, her phone buzzed. A new message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. "If you're still in his house, you'll die with him." Her hands trembled, but instead of fear, what filled her chest was worry, not for herself, but for the man fighting somewhere in the dark. Outside, the first sunlight broke over the lake, the same lake that had mirrored Henry's silent, proud figure just the day before. Olivia pressed her hand against her heart. It beat wildly. She knew even if reason told her to run, her heart had already chosen to stay. Because sometimes, danger isn't what we fear. It's the only thing that makes us feel alive. The Miami sky was clear again, as if the night of blood and fire had never happened. Morning sunlight poured through the windows, spreading soft ribbons of gold across the floor. Olivia sat beside Noah's bed, watching the boy sleep peacefully. His nightmare was over, at least his was. But in her chest, the echoes of gunfire, the smell of smoke, and Henry's eyes in the chaos still lingered heavy, smoldering, like a storm refusing to pass. The door opened softly. Henry entered, wearing a crisp white shirt and carrying a cup of coffee. He paused at the doorway, his expression softening when he saw her. "You're up early, Dr. Bennett." Olivia turned slightly, her voice quiet as a breath. "I couldn't sleep. Last night felt too real." Henry didn't reply. He set the cup down on the table and stood beside her. Morning light brushed against his cheek, highlighting a thin cut along his neck, a wound not yet healed. Olivia frowned. "You never take care of yourself, do you? I've grown used to pain." "But Noah hasn't," she countered, her tone suddenly firm. "If you get hurt, who will take care of him?" Henry gave a faint laugh, saying nothing. He just looked at her, a long, steady look, as if memorizing the way she worried about him. "Finally," he said quietly. 2 weeks? I want you to stay for 2 weeks. After that, if you still wish to leave, I won't stop you." Olivia hesitated. 2 weeks, it sounded short, but with him, every day felt like a drop of water disturbing the surface of a still lake, each ripple reaching deeper. "Why 2 weeks? Because that's how long I need to settle everything. After that, no one will ever threaten you or Noah again." He said it simply, but with absolute conviction. Olivia knew that for Henry, promises weren't words of comfort, they were oaths made by a man who lived on the edge of life and death. She exhaled slowly. "All right, 2 weeks, but only for Noah." Henry nodded. "I understand." In the days that followed, time moved in a strange rhythm, both peaceful and tense. Each morning, Olivia played and read with Noah. The boy grew brighter by the day, his laughter becoming the one thing that seemed to ease Henry's perpetual tension. But at night, the house changed. Silence deepened. The air grew cold and alert. Sometimes, Olivia heard cars pulling up outside, quiet voices, the clank of iron gates closing. Every time, she knew Henry had never truly left his battlefield. He had merely brought it home and buried it under the weight of stone walls and calm composure. One afternoon, Henry returned earlier than usual. He found Olivia in the garden, reading aloud to Noah. The sight stopped him in his tracks. Her voice was soft and rhythmic, and Noah, sitting snugly in her lap, clapped his tiny hands with each turn of the page. Henry couldn't remember the last time he'd heard his son laugh like that. The sound filled the garden, and his chest tightened painfully, the mix of joy and grief too heavy to separate. Olivia noticed him. "You're home," she said gently. "Yeah," he replied, taking the seat beside her. "You both seem to be enjoying yourselves." "Noah loves fairy tales," she smiled. "He believes every story has a happy ending." Henry fell silent. A shadow crossed his eyes before he murmured, "I used to believe that too, until the world taught me that sometimes. The good die before the story ends." Olivia's voice softened. "And so you chose to survive, even if it meant doing the wrong things." Henry turned to her, a faint sadness flickering in his gaze. "No, Olivia, I chose not to let anyone else die in my place again." She said nothing. His words held a truth too raw to doubt. The late sunlight shimmered through the leaves, reflecting off his face. And in that quiet moment, Olivia realized she no longer saw Henry as a stranger. He was still dangerous, still an enigma wrapped in shadows, but beneath it all, he was a man haunted by solitude so deep it hurt to witness. That night, rain came sudden and fierce, as Miami rain always did. Olivia stood by the window, watching droplets hit the glass. Noah was asleep. The mansion was still, save for the distant rumble of thunder. The door opened. Henry stepped in, coat soaked. The smell of rain mingled with the faint scent of gunpowder. Olivia didn't ask. She simply handed him a towel. He took it, ran it through his hair, then sat heavily on the sofa. "Trouble again?" she asked quietly. "No more trouble," he said hoarsely. "Just the man behind it all. You found him?" Henry nodded. "Marcus. He used to be my right hand. Now he wants everything I built." She shivered. "And you're going to end it," Henry said simply, then met her eyes. "But this time, I'm not leaving you and Noah here alone. You want me to go with you? I want you near me," he said, his voice dropping, the calm words carrying something unspoken, something fragile. "When you're close, I can focus. I can fight." Olivia's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond. In Henry's world, being close wasn't just an invitation, it was a vow. "Do you even know what you're pulling me into?" "Henry," she whispered, "I don't belong in that world." He stepped forward, stopping right in front of her. His hand rose, fingers brushing her cheek so lightly it barely felt real. "I know, but since the day you stepped onto that plane, I haven't belonged to mine either." Their eyes met, caught in the flickering glow of rain and thunder. Neither spoke. They didn't need to, because sometimes a look said everything words couldn't. The next morning, Henry was gone. Marta only said he had urgent business. Olivia tried to stay calm, but with every passing hour, dread grew heavier. By late afternoon, one of the guards appeared at the door with a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Henry. "If I'm not back in 3 days, take Noah to my friend's home in Los Angeles. He knows the way. Trust no one except Marta." The paper was crumpled, the handwriting rushed. Olivia clutched it, her heart pounding. She knew Henry was walking into danger, and this time, he might not return. On the second night, she couldn't bear the silence any longer. She went to the security room and replayed the footage from earlier that morning. The cameras showed Henry leaving alone, without his guards, carrying only a gun and a small envelope. Under the dim light at the gate, his face looked resolute, but in his eyes was something else, fear of losing what mattered. And in that instant, Olivia understood Henry wasn't fighting for power. He was fighting to protect her and Noah from the darkness he had created. The rain returned that night, fiercer than before. Olivia sat by the window, staring into the storm. Thunder rolled across the sky, matching the pace of her heartbeat. In her mind, his voice echoed, "I want you near me." But now, between them stretched an entire city. She picked up her phone, hesitated, then pressed call. No answer, only the cold, mechanical tone of the signal. "Please, Henry," she whispered, voice breaking. "Come back. Outside." The rain swallowed her words. Meanwhile, Somewhere in the darkness of Miami, a black car sped down the highway, engines roaring, bullets shattering the rear window. Henry gripped the steering wheel, glancing into the mirror, his own eyes staring back, weary but steadfast. On the seat beside him lay the letter he'd written to Olivia, stained with blood. He whispered to himself through clenched teeth, "I'll come back to you. Olivia, even if it's with my last breath." Inside the mansion, Olivia sat motionless by the window, fingers clutching the note he'd left behind. Lightning flashed, illuminating the trembling words. Trust no one except Marta. She didn't know that at that very moment. A dark figure stood at the gates, under the torrent of rain. The man in a long coat smiled faintly, his cold eyes fixed on the glowing house beyond. The 2 weeks Henry had promised might last longer than she ever imagined. The next afternoon, the Miami sky hung heavy and gray, the wind thick with the scent of an approaching storm. Olivia stood by the window, watching the palms sway restlessly in the garden. The silence inside the mansion was unsettling. Henry still hadn't returned. It had been 3 days since he left. Noah was playing quietly in the living room with Marta, blissfully unaware that the world around him was beginning to collapse. Olivia held her teacup, trying to calm herself, but every instinct screamed that something was wrong. She tried calling Henry again, but his phone remained out of service. This time, even the guards at the gate were gone. "Marta, did he say anything to you?" Olivia asked, her voice low. "The master told me to stay with you and the boy," the woman replied, her eyes full of worry. "But this morning, the 2 guards left. They said they had urgent orders. Orders from whom they didn't say." The air grew thick and cold. Olivia tightened her grip on the cup, dread creeping up her spine. She stepped outside. The iron gates were ajar, tire tracks cutting across the stone driveway. Everything was eerily quiet. Then a faint sound behind her, like footsteps crunching gravel. She turned. A stranger in a black coat stood there, his face half hidden beneath a hat. Before she could react, he pressed a white cloth over her nose. The sharp chemical scent hit her instantly. She struggled, but the world began to fade. Marta's voice echoed faintly. Noah's terrified cry pierced the air, then everything went black. When Olivia woke, she was in a dim, damp room. The cracked concrete ceiling glowed faintly under a flickering yellow bulb. Her wrists were bound with plastic ties. One side of her face throbbed, likely from the blow when they dragged her into the van. She tried to remember. Everything had happened too fast. Shadows, engines, the smell of leather, and that scent. The same deep sandalwood Henry always wore. No, it couldn't have been him. But if not, why had it been there? The door creaked open. Harsh light spilled in as a man stepped through, tall, in a black shirt, eyes like cold glass. "Good afternoon, Dr. Bennett," he rasped, voice echoing off the concrete. "I hope you're not too uncomfortable." "Who are you?" Olivia croaked. "What do you want?" He smiled thinly, stepping closer, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "I used to work for Henry Sullivan, but I don't serve him anymore." Olivia froze. That name, Henry Sullivan, landed like a curse. "Marcus," she whispered. He chuckled. "Ah, so he told you about me. Henry never could keep secrets for long." "Why did you take me to send him a message?" Marcus said, voice turning sharp. "Henry betrayed me, and what I want isn't just power. I want to see him kneel for a woman." Olivia clenched her fists. "You think that'll break him?" "You don't know Henry." "Oh, I know him better than you do," Marcus sneered. "He'll come for you. He always does when he's afraid to lose something. And that's when I'll finish you both." He gestured to a guard. "Don't let her die, not yet." The door slammed shut, leaving Olivia in suffocating silence. She struggled against the ties, her nails cutting into her skin until blood welled. The plastic wouldn't give. She scanned the room, only a metal table, a few crates, no windows, just a small ventilation slit. She needed to stay calm. If Henry came, he'd be walking straight into a trap. She couldn't let that happen. Then it hit her, the metal hairpin still tangled in her hair, twisting her wrists painfully. She tilted her head, scraping the pin loose. It took nearly 10 minutes to wedge it between her fingers. Slowly, carefully, she began to work at the binding. Footsteps sounded outside. She froze. The door opened again, but it wasn't Marcus. A young man stepped in, eyes downcast. He set down a tray of water, muttering, "I shouldn't be doing this." "What's your name?" Olivia asked softly. "Doesn't matter. If he kills me, and Henry kills you after, do you really think you'll make it out alive?" she said quietly, each word sharp as a blade. "Help me, and you might still have a chance." He hesitated. Conflict flickered in his eyes, but he shook his head and turned away. The door clicked shut behind him. Still, Olivia had noticed a phone in his pocket. All she needed was one chance. Across the city, Henry Sullivan stepped out of a black car, rain drumming steadily on his shoulders. His face was stone. In front of him loomed the abandoned docks once Marcus's territory. "Any news?" he asked. A subordinate bowed his head. "We found the tracks from the mansion. The GPS signal stopped here, at Dock 17. After that, nothing." Henry's jaw tightened. "He wants me to come to him." The man hesitated. "Sir, it's a trap." Henry drew his gun, voice icy. "Prepare the team. If I'm not out in 2 hours, burn it all." Inside the warehouse, Olivia finally broke free. Her wrists bled, but she didn't feel the pain. She thought only of Noah and Henry. Engines roared outside. Headlights sliced through the cracks in the door. Olivia crawled closer to look. Henry? He stepped out of the car alone, no guards, no armor, just a gun in his hand. His posture was calm, but every movement carried the weight of danger. Marcus emerged from the shadows, clapping slowly. Henry Sullivan, always the same flair for drama. "Let her go," Henry said, his voice low and deadly. Her Marcus smirked. "Ah, your little doctor. You never change. Henry, always letting your heart ruin your plans. What do you want to make you watch what you fear most?" Marcus raised his gun toward the back door where 2 men dragged Olivia out, wrists bound, face streaked with dirt. Henry froze. For a split second, something broke in his eyes, then hardened into steel. "Marcus, if you hurt her, you won't live long enough to regret it." Marcus laughed, a sharp, metallic sound that echoed through the dock. "Too bad. Henry, this time, you're the one who loses." A gunshot split the air. Smoke curled slowly in the dim light. Olivia fell, pain bursting through her shoulder as warm blood spread under her palm. Henry's roar tore through the silence. He fired 3 shots in quick succession. Marcus crumpled to the ground, eyes wide, the life fading from them in stunned disbelief. Henry dropped to his knees beside her, hands trembling. "No, Olivia, no. Stay with me. Don't close your eyes." She managed a weak smile, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm fine. It's just a graze." He looked down. The bullet had only skimmed her shoulder, bleeding badly but not fatal. Relief flooded his face. He gathered her in his arms, his voice breaking. "I told you. I'll always come when you're in danger." Olivia's vision blurred, but her smile lingered. "And you always do." She passed out in his arms. Henry held her tighter, his eyes burning with fury and fear. "Get a doctor," he barked to his men. "Now, don't let her die." Outside, the storm raged on. Through the rain, Henry Sullivan carried Olivia away from the docks, carrying with her both the darkness he'd fought for years and the last fragile light he still believed in. The private hospital on the outskirts of Miami glowed quietly through the night, like an island of light adrift in a sea of darkness. Inside the recovery room, sterile white light reflected off Olivia's pale skin. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, and the steady beeping of the heart monitor echoed like the fragile rhythm of survival. Henry sat there, his eyes fixed on her, unblinking, unyielding. His hand held hers tightly, trembling slightly, as if letting go would mean losing her forever. His shirt was still stained with blood, her blood. For the first time in years, Henry Sullivan was not the cold, untouchable crime lord of Miami. He was simply a man terrified. Marta entered softly and laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The doctor says the wound isn't deep, but she lost a lot of blood. She needs rest." Henry nodded faintly, his voice hoarse. "I won't let her out of my sight again." Marta looked at him, her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. "Sir, sometimes love doesn't protect people by keeping them locked away." Henry didn't reply. He only lowered his gaze to Olivia lying still, her hair splayed across the pillow, her skin almost translucent. In the darkness of his world, she was the only light he dared believe in, and that was exactly why he couldn't bear to lose her. When Olivia woke, morning light filtered through the blinds, scattering soft gold across the ceiling. She heard the faint cry of seabirds and the distant rush of waves. Everything felt too peaceful to be real. Then she felt a warm hand wrapped tightly around hers. She turned her head. "Henry?" He sat beside her, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, his strong features softened by fatigue. When her eyes fluttered open, he leaned closer, voice low and rough. "You're awake." Olivia's lips moved faintly. "You haven't slept." He gave a tired smile. "I can't. I'm afraid that if I close my eyes, you'll be gone when I open them." She studied him. There was something different in his gaze, a vulnerability he had hidden for so long. "Henry," she whispered, her voice weak. "Why didn't you let me go? I was the reason you almost got killed." His grip on her hand tightened, his eyes dark and deep as the sea. "Because my whole life has been about losing. I lost my parents, my friends, my faith, even my humanity. But when you walked in, you reminded me that I was still human. Tell me, Olivia, how could I let you go?" His voice broke at the end. She didn't answer, only closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand encasing hers. A long sigh escaped her lips, not quite relief, but acceptance. Days passed, slow and uncertain. Olivia's body healed, but her heart grew heavier with each passing moment. Henry was always there bringing her medicine, reading to her, even brewing tea with the same hands that had once pulled triggers. One afternoon, she sat on the porch, the sea breeze tousling her hair. Henry stepped out carrying a cup of coffee and a glass of orange juice. "You should drink this," he said, setting it before her. "The doctor says you're low on vitamin C." Olivia smiled faintly, not touching the glass. "Do you always follow the doctor's orders?" He looked at her and smirked. "Only when the doctor is you." Her smile faltered. Henry sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The sun dipped low, turning the ocean into molten gold. For a moment, his face seemed softer, almost peaceful. "I used to think," he murmured, "that if I died, the world wouldn't change. But the day you fell, I realized I was wrong. You made me afraid of losing something I never thought I could have peace." Olivia turned to him, her heart tightening. "Henry, you can't find peace while living in the shadows. Someday, the light will expose everything you've tried to hide." He gave a faint smile. "Then will you be that light for me?" "Light doesn't belong to anyone, Henry," she said softly. "It only shows the way it doesn't stay." Her words hung in the air between them. Neither spoke again. Only the sound of waves filled the silence, the distance between them close enough to touch, yet divided by two separate worlds. That night, after Olivia fell asleep, Henry stepped out onto the balcony. Luca, his most loyal lieutenant, was waiting. "Is it done?" Henry asked, his eyes still on the sea. "The dock's been cleared. Marcus's death is being reported as an accident. But there's something else." Henry turned slightly, his expression hardening. "Say it. There's been a leak. Someone knows Dr. Bennett is alive." The air froze. Henry gripped the railing, his voice turning to ice. "Who?" "We're not sure yet, but it might be someone inside." Henry gave a low, bitter laugh. "I used to think once enough blood was spilled, loyalty would follow. Seems I was still naive." He went back inside and looked at Olivia sleeping peacefully. Her face was calm, lips parted slightly, as if dreaming of a world untouched by violence. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his eyes softening. "No matter who betrays me," he whispered, more vow than words, "no one will ever touch you again." The next morning, Olivia woke to an empty chair beside her bed. Henry was gone. Marta told her he had left early, leaving only a small note. "If you wake and I'm not there, don't worry. I'll be back before sunset." Olivia smiled faintly, but unease gnawed at her chest. She knew he was hiding something, ever since she'd woken. Every time she asked about Marcus or the explosion at the docks, Henry changed the subject. She glanced at the clock. Noon? Outside, the sky had darkened and the wind had shifted. Something felt wrong. At that same moment, in a derelict building near the coast, Henry entered a dim room littered with maps and photographs. On the wall, pictures of Olivia were marked with red ink. A voice emerged from the shadows. "You've always had a way of creating your own enemies." Henry didn't turn. "If you're here to scare me, you're late. Marcus is dead." "Marcus was just a pawn." The voice sneered. "The game's still on, and your most precious piece, Dr. Bennett, is already in play." Henry spun around, drawing his gun, fury flashing in his eyes. "Touch her, and I'll erase your bloodline from this earth." Laughter echoed from the darkness. Threats, as always. "But tell me, how can you protect her when the person who betrayed you lives under your own roof?" Henry froze. A flash of memory crossed his mind. Marta, the woman who had raised him, who had been more loyal than family. No, he didn't want to believe it, but the logic in him, cold and precise, refused to rule it out. He stormed out of the room. Outside, thunder cracked as rain began to fall. Back at the hospital, Olivia watched the storm through the window, her unease growing. Marta entered carrying a small bag. "Marta, where's Henry? He's on his way back," the woman said gently. "You should rest a bit longer. Olivia, I'll make you some ginger tea." Olivia nodded and smiled faintly. But as Marta turned away, Olivia noticed a faint bruise on her wrist, like a mark left by a tight restraint. A chill crawled up her spine. Before she could react, the door burst open. A man stormed in with a gun. Marta screamed and shoved Olivia to the floor. "Stay down," the man barked. Olivia clutched her still healing shoulder, trembling as the gunman advanced. And then, in one swift motion, Marta, the gentle housekeeper, pulled a hidden knife from her coat and drove it into the man's chest. A gunshot rang out. Marta staggered back and fell. Blood spread across the white tile floor. Olivia screamed, crawling toward her. The woman smiled weakly, her hand trembling as it gripped Olivia's. "Tell Henry, I'm sorry. I had no choice." Her final breath faded into the air. The door flew open again. Henry burst in, eyes wild, his gun still smoking. The intruder collapsed at his feet. He froze at the sight before him, Olivia kneeling in a pool of blood. Marta motionless in her arms. The room reeked of iron and rain hammered against the windows. Henry dropped his weapon and crossed the room in 2 steps. Olivia looked up, tears streaking down her face. "She saved me." "Henry." He said nothing. He just lifted her from the floor, holding her tightly. His voice broke, low and rough against her hair. "I'm here, Olivia. I'm here." But in his eyes, pain and loss had carved themselves deep. This time, he hadn't just lost a loyal friend. He'd lost the fragile peace he'd tried to build around her. Outside, the storm raged harder, washing away everything: blood, guilt, and the promise he'd made, "I'll be back before sunset." The night after the shooting, the hospital lay shrouded in silence. Only the rain tapping against the windows broke the stillness, mingling with the fading scent of gunpowder and antiseptic. Olivia sat by the bed, wrapped in a thin gown, her eyes blankly fixed on the black sky outside. Marta had been taken away. Henry had seen her off without a word. No tears, no farewell, just a long, hollow stare. But Olivia knew he was in pain. The way his hands bled from clenching his fists as she fell told her everything she needed to know. Since that night, Henry was no longer the same. He spoke less, his eyes darker, as if every moment of peace was only a pause between storms. Olivia remained in the hospital, but she knew one thing clearly: they were no longer safe. The darkness was coming for them slowly, but inevitably. On the 3rd morning, pale sunlight filtered through the curtains. Olivia rose early and walked down the hallway. At the far end, she saw Henry standing alone by the window, his back straight, hands in his pockets, the faint light casting a lonely glow across his face. She approached quietly. "You're not going to rest at all, are you?" He turned, offering a faint, weary smile. "I'm not used to sleeping long. In the dark, that's when you're most likely to be attacked. You still think you're on a battlefield. Henry. For me, Olivia, the battlefield never ends. There are only survivors, and the ones who disappear. She gazed at him, realizing that before her stood not just a man who once carried a gun, but someone fighting desperately to keep his humanity alive in a world built on betrayal. "Marta didn't betray you, Henry," she said softly, her voice trembling. "She only wanted to protect Noah." His jaw tightened, voice dropping low like thunder. "I know. But she chose silence until it was too late. And in my world, silence is also a crime." Olivia's eyes shimmered. "Do you say that to punish her, or to punish yourself?" Henry said nothing. His shoulders trembled ever so slightly before he turned and walked away, leaving her in the hallway with her unanswered question hanging in the air. That afternoon, Olivia asked to take a walk along the coast. The doctor said she needed fresh air, but really, she just wanted to breathe in peace again. The waves were gentle, the sky impossibly clear, as if violence had never touched the world. She sat on a wooden bench, watching sunlight ripple across the surface of the water. Henry's words echoed in her mind. "In the dark, that's when you're most likely to be attacked." Then, a voice behind her broke the quiet. "You could leave now. You know." She turned. A tall man in a gray suit stood there. His face was unfamiliar, but his eyes carried something that froze her blood familiarity. "Did Henry send you?" she asked, forcing calm into her tone. He smiled faintly. "I used to work for Henry, but not anymore. I came to tell you something. He can't protect anyone forever. Not even you." Olivia frowned. "Who are you?" He leaned closer, voice a whisper near her ear. "I'm someone who knows the truth about Henry better than he does himself. Henry Sullivan is the man who killed your husband." The world went silent. Wind whipped through her hair, but she couldn't feel it. "What did you say?" Her voice shook. "My husband died in an accident. In New York." "Yes, an accident." His smile turned cold. "But Henry ordered it. Your husband was the lead auditor on a money laundering operation. He found out. Henry signed the order to make it disappear. The price was Daniel Bennett's life." Olivia's heart dropped. "You're lying." "Believe me or not," he said, pulling a folder from his coat and tossing it onto the bench. "Inside is the original report with Henry Sullivan's signature. The end of your illusion." Before she could speak, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd along the boardwalk. Olivia's trembling hands tore open the envelope. Inside a document, Sullivan Holdings, 2020, and at the bottom, a clear signature, Henry A. Sullivan. Below it, a note, "Settlement payment for vehicle accident, target Daniel Bennett," her late husband's name. The world around her collapsed, and said, that night, Henry found Olivia sitting in the hospital lounge, the dim yellow light casting cold shadows across her face. Before her lay the crumpled paper. "Who gave this to you?" Henry's voice was rough, low like wind scraping stone. Olivia looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "So it's true," she whispered. "You killed Daniel." He took a step forward, then stopped. His silence was enough of an answer. Olivia laughed, a broken, trembling sound that shattered the air between them. "I told myself you were just a man who'd been hurt, that there was still goodness in you. But the man I trusted, the man I loved, murdered my husband." Henry staggered back as if struck. His breath came heavy, his eyes empty. "I didn't know he was your husband. Back then, I only signed an order. I never pulled the trigger myself. But in my world, there's no difference between doing it and commanding it." "So it's true," she whispered. "Daniel died because of you." He took another step toward her, but she raised a trembling hand to stop him. "Don't touch me. I lost my husband, my life, and now I realize I've fallen in love with the man who destroyed it. Do you even know what that feels like?" "Henry." Henry closed his eyes, as if something inside him had split open. "If I could trade my life for his, I would. But I can't undo what I've done. All I can say is, I've never loved anyone the way I love you." Olivia broke down, tears streaming down her face. The man she thought was her destiny was now her greatest sin. Love doesn't wash away blood. "Henry," she whispered through her sobs, "it only makes the wound deeper." He took one more step, his voice trembling. I don't ask for forgiveness. Olivia, I only ask you to understand. Everything I've done since the day I met you, every choice was to protect you. Protect me, she laughed bitterly. You're protecting me from the darkness you created. Henry froze. The wind howled through the open window, snuffing out the candlelight. In the dim glow that remained, he stood there, eyes like stone, filled with pain and an unyielding resolve. You can hate me, you can leave me, he said quietly, but don't go back to that world. They'll kill you if they know you've learned the truth. Olivia didn't reply. She picked up the envelope, turned away, and walked toward the door. The sound of it closing behind her echoed sharp and final like a blade slicing through two souls. Henry stood motionless, staring at the door, making no move to follow. He knew now if love meant holding on. His love only knew how to lose. That night, Olivia left the hospital. She walked alone through the empty streets as light rain began to fall, soaking through the paper in her hands. Henry's signature blurred, melting into the ink as if he himself were fading from her world. Thunder rolled across the Miami sky, and inside her chest, another explosion echoed small, but enough to shatter the last of her faith. From a high window far away, Henry watched her silhouette disappear into the rain, his fists clenched, his heart breaking silently. He didn't call out. He didn't chase her. He only whispered into the darkness, "If loving you is a sin, then I'll carry it forever." Outside, the rain washed away every trace of blood, of guilt, and of two souls who would never find each other again, bound forever by a promise left unfinished. 3 weeks after leaving Miami, Olivia was living in a small apartment in Boston, a city where winter came early and fog wrapped around its old, narrow streets. She had chosen this place because no one knew her name, and no one knew her past. A past forever tied to Henry Sullivan. But even after changing her number and erasing every trace of contact, his shadow still clung to every breath she took. Every morning, she found herself staring through the misted window, half expecting to see a black car pull up, to hear that deep, familiar voice say, "I'm here, Olivia." But it never came. Henry was truly gone. She told herself she had to forget to live like an ordinary person and again. Go to work, buy flowers, drink coffee, sleep through the night. But memories of him, his dark eyes, his warm hands, and that final night in the rain returned again and again, haunting her like a gentle nightmare she could never wake from. One quiet February afternoon, while snow drifted past her window, Olivia received an unmarked package. Inside was a thick, worn leather notebook. On the first page, in a handwriting she knew by heart, were the words, "To Olivia, if you're reading this, it means I kept my promise." Her hands trembled. Her heartbeat stopped for a moment. She turned to the next page. "I've left Miami. Marcus is gone, but the darkness never disappears. I don't know how long I'll survive, but you must know this, Daniel Bennett didn't die because of me. I signed the settlement papers. But the case was manipulated. The man who ordered his death stands above both of us, and he's still watching you." Below the message was a photograph Henry beside another man. The man's face was unfamiliar, but his eyes were sharp as blades. The note beneath it read, "Edward Voss, the one truly behind it all." Olivia dropped the notebook, her breathing shallow. Logic told her it could be another one of Henry's manipulations, a last attempt to earn forgiveness. But deep down, she knew he wasn't lying. Henry had never begged for redemption. That night, she sat by the window and read every page. Some were only a few lines long, some smeared with faint stains of blood. "I still remember your laughter in the garden. Maybe that was the first and last time I heard something so pure. If one day I disappear, don't think it's because I ran away. I'll only be fighting my battle in another place. You once asked if love could save someone like me. Now I know it doesn't save, but it makes a man want to be saved." Each sentence cut into her heart like a blade. She closed the notebook, tears falling silently as the cold wind slipped through the window cracks. The next morning, she made a decision to fly to New York. At the end of the notebook, Henry had written, "If you want the truth, go to Warehouse 47 Brooklyn Docks. Trust no one, not even those who claim to be my friends." Olivia packed her fear and the last fragments of love she still carried. She knew returning meant stepping back into danger. But if Daniel truly hadn't died because of Henry, she had to know. The sky over New York was gray and heavy. When her cab stopped at the docks, the wind off the harbor was sharp and cold. Warehouse 47 stood hidden behind a line of rusted containers. The steel door was chained, but the lock was already broken, as if someone had been there before her. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. Faint light filtered through the cracks, revealing the worn concrete floor. In the center sat a small wooden box with a note taped to it to Olivia. She opened it. Inside was a USB drive, a photograph, and a folded piece of paper. If you're reading this, I may already be gone. Find Edward Voss. He's behind Daniel's death, Marta's death, and mine. I'm not afraid to die. Olivia, I'm only afraid you'll keep believing I was the monster. Her hands shook as she unfolded the note. She inserted the USB into an old laptop resting nearby. The screen flickered, then came to life. Henry appeared sitting in a dark room, wearing a black shirt, eyes fixed directly on the camera. Olivia, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it back. You always asked why I chose this life. The truth is, I never chose it. I was born into it. Edward made me. He created the Sullivan the world learned to fear, but I never wanted to be that monster. It wasn't until I met you that I learned what it means to live. His voice cracked at the end. If I could start over, I'd still choose you, even if the cost were blood in my soul. But don't come looking for me. The dark never lets the light survive. The video ended. Olivia sat frozen, tears streaming silently down her face. The man on the screen wasn't the ruthless boss the world feared. He was a man burning himself just to keep a single light alive for the one he loved. She was still trembling when a sound echoed behind her. Olivia turned sharply. A middle-aged man in a gray suit stood at the doorway, smiling coldly. Good evening, Dr. Bennett. Seems Henry still manages to haunt you, even from the grave. You're Edward Voss, she whispered. Ah, so he did talk about me, he said with a smirk. I suppose he also told you I killed your husband. Is it true, she demanded, fists clenched. Of course, Edward replied casually. Daniel Bennett was too honest for his own good. I gave the order. Henry carried it out. Then he fell in love with the widow of the man he killed. Tragic, isn't it? Olivia's body shook, but her eyes didn't flinch. You're lying. Henry didn't kill Daniel. Edward laughed, the sound echoing through the empty space. Oh, really? Then who did me? I don't dirty my own hands. Doctor, Henry was the blade I wielded. He stepped closer, his breath cold against her ear. And he died trying to protect you. I sent a little gift, a bomb, in the car he liked to drive. Quick, painless. Olivia froze. The floor seemed to vanish beneath her. Her heart hammered painfully. You're saying, Henry is dead yesterday, Edward replied with chilling calm. On his way to meet me. And now, it's your turn. He wanted to protect you, but no one escapes me. He raised his gun. The click of the trigger rang out, followed by another shot from behind. A flash. A thud. Edward collapsed, eyes wide, blood blooming across his chest. In the doorway stood Henry, pale, bleeding, but alive. His eyes burned bright through the haze. Olivia couldn't breathe. Henry, you're alive. He took a slow step forward, a faint, broken smile on his lips. I told you, Olivia, I won't die while you're still trapped in the dark. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. Warm blood soaked her hands as she wept against his shoulder. He held her close, voice trembling against her hair. You're safe now. You're late, she sobbed. He smiled weakly. But I came. Outside, snow began to fall harder. They stood together amid the ruin, their breaths mingling in the frozen air. Henry whispered, his voice rough and fading. It's over. After tonight, there will be no more Edward, no more Sullivan. Only Henry, the man who loves you. Olivia looked into his eyes deep, weary, but finally full of light. For the first time, she saw no darkness there. But before she could answer, blood poured from his shoulder. His body faltered. "Henry," she screamed. He smiled faintly, brushing a hand against her cheek, a silent farewell in his touch. "At last. I'm free. Olivia. And so are you." He collapsed in her arms, the smile still faintly on his lips. Outside, the snow kept falling white, endless, and still, as if the whole world paused to mourn a soul who had chosen to love, even knowing that love itself was a sin. Olivia held him for a long time. She didn't cry anymore. She just sat there in silence, letting her heartbeat slow with his fading pulse, two hearts finding peace at last. For perhaps, in that final moment, even love born from darkness could be as pure and fleeting as a snowflake melting upon cold ground. Early the next morning, New York lay under a thin veil of mist, like the city itself was mourning. Inside the cold warehouse, the first light of dawn streamed through a shattered window, illuminating two silent figures, one lying still in the arms of the other. Olivia sat motionless. Henry lay in her embrace, his face peaceful, as if he had finally found the one thing he'd never known in life, peace. The bleeding had stopped. Only a trace of warmth lingered beneath her trembling fingers. She brushed a lock of hair from his forehead, whispering through tears, "You promised to live. Henry, why did you choose this way?" The wind swept in from the sea, carrying the scent of salt and metal. The wall where they had fought was broken, yet the sunlight slipped through the cracks, bathing them in gold, not the glow of an ending, but the calm of release. Henry had once said, "I'm not afraid to die, only afraid you'll still believe I'm a monster." Now Olivia understood. He hadn't sought death, he had sought redemption. 2 weeks later, Henry Sullivan's funeral was held on a quiet piece of land by the sea, the place he had once promised to take Olivia, on a day when there would be no more blood. No one attended except her and his young son, Noah. The boy stood beside her, clutching a small bouquet of white flowers. His eyes were too pure for all he had witnessed. Olivia knelt, holding him close, whispering softly, "Your father once told me that when you look at the sea, it means all darkness will drift away." The boy looked up, his voice small. "Has the darkness in him drifted away too?" Olivia smiled through her tears, her voice light as the wind. "Yes, it drifted away with him to a place where there's no more pain." She placed the flowers on the grave. The headstone was simple, Henry A. Sullivan, 1984 to 2025. He loved deeply, and that love was his redemption. A strong breeze blew, scattering the petals into the air, spinning them into a small circle before they vanished into the sky. Olivia stood still. Inside, there was no anger left, only a vast quiet, where memory and love blended together like two rivers, meeting at last. That night, she returned to her small apartment in Boston. Everything was just as she had left it, the wooden chair, the vase of dried flowers, and Henry's leather notebook. She opened it again. On the last page, his handwriting trembled slightly. "If one morning you see the sunrise and not me, know that I'm watching you from where the sun begins. Don't cry, Olivia. Don't let love become a wound. Let it be the proof that we once lived and once loved for real." Olivia closed the book, smiling faintly. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky had cleared, revealing the moon shining across the distant ocean, the same ocean where Henry had once stood, with those deep eyes and that rough, tender voice she would carry with her forever. A month later, Olivia returned to work at St. Ange Mary's Hospital in New York. She was no longer the dreamer she once was. Her eyes were calmer now, softer but stronger. When a small boy was rushed in with a weak heart, she held his hand and smiled gently. "Don't be afraid. Every pain passes. You know the light is still waiting out there." The boy smiled, and warmth flooded her chest. In that moment, she realized she had finally stepped out of the dark. Henry was gone, but he had left her something priceless, faith that even after all the wrongs, love could still make a person better. One late spring afternoon, Olivia took Noah to the sea, to the same shore where she had said goodbye to Henry. The boy ran along the sand, laughing as the waves chased his feet. Olivia watched him, then turned her eyes toward the endless horizon. The sun was setting, painting the ocean gold and amber. She closed her eyes and listened to the rhythm of the waves. For a moment, she could almost hear a whisper beside her ear. "I'm here, Olivia." A single tear slipped down, not from sorrow, but from peace. She turned and saw Noah waving, his laughter bright against the wind. Olivia walked toward him, gathered him into her arms. In that embrace, she knew Henry had never truly gone. He lived on in the breath of their sun, in the light of each sunset, and in the heart of the woman he had once loved with everything he had left. That night, when Noah was asleep, Olivia sat by the window, tea in hand, watching moonlight scatter across the sea. She unlocked Henry's old YouTube channel, the one he had called Solace, for Olivia. A single video played. Henry appeared in dim light, looking straight into the camera. His voice was low, slow, and heartbreakingly warm. "If you're watching this, it means I'm no longer there to say it myself. I wasn't perfect. Olivia, I hurt too many people, you most of all. But if a soul like mine is still allowed to love, then you are the reason I believe in that love. Don't stop at the pain. Live. Because when you live well, I'll live forever in every breath you take." Olivia bowed her head, smiling through tears. Outside, the city lights shimmered on the water like 1,000 tiny stars. She whispered softly, as if sending her words to the wind. "You've lived in the dark long enough. Henry, now it's time for you to rest." A breeze drifted through the window, brushing her cheek like a familiar hand. She looked up, and for a fleeting second, through the mist over the sea, she saw a faint silhouette, a tall man standing quietly, his eyes warm and deep, just like that day long ago on the fateful flight. She smiled, no fear, no regret, because at last, their love born in darkness had found its way home to the light. The next morning, the sun rose brilliant and clear. Olivia stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee, breathing in the scent of a new day. Noah ran up from behind, hugging her tightly. "Mom, the sky is so beautiful today." Olivia bent down, kissing his forehead, her smile radiant. "Yes, sweetheart, it's beautiful, because someone up there is smiling at us." A soft breeze swept past, carrying the salt of the sea, gentle as the touch she still remembered. Henry Sullivan had left the world in the only way he knew, quietly, with pride, leaving behind a love strong enough to give life to those who remained. Olivia closed her eyes, letting sunlight spill over her face. In her heart, his final words echoed. "When we love someone with all our darkness, the light in them will guide us back to being human." And indeed, that love had led them both back to the sunrise. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel and share your thoughts below. Every comment is a spark that helps future stories come alive and reach more hearts.